Hello, everybody. Welcome to Friday Night Lines here at Foxy. Today, we are focusing on organic shapes, organic forms. So, this is going to be really great building off of any learning that we've already done with forms in the form of cubes, pyramids, cones, cylinders, spheres, of course, anything like that. Those are like your basic geometric forms. But when you start to look at subjects like human beings or animals, plants, anything that is inherently not geometric, it can feel a little confusing, a little bit, you know, hard to kind of figure out the heads or tails of it. We are going to be focusing on creating some fun organic shapes and giving them dimensionality, giving them that 3D-ness that really makes them pop, and continuing to help evolve your brain on 3D thinking, really helping get your 3D configurator in your head all worked out. And this is one that I'm really excited about because I learned forms, basic geometric forms, when I first began drawing as well, but it was really not my interest. I was much more interested in drawing people or drawing animals. And organic shapes, they have a bit of a learning curve. It can be a little tough to make something feel like it's got a 3D quality about it, especially when you aren't working with really hard, sharp edges like you do with geometric shapes. Organics are much more soft, curvy, unpredictable, and that poses a real challenge. But hopefully, with the practice that we're going to be getting into today, you'll have a much stronger idea of how to kind of 3D model these in your head and how to translate that onto paper with actual concrete techniques. All right, this is going to be a really fun one. I hope you have your drawing arms ready. If not, now's a good time to do a little stretch, get a little bit of elbow circles in there, move those arms around. If you haven't warmed up, something that's great to do is simply to get a pencil of some kind and then just go in circles. Circles, circles, circles. This is a wonderful way to warm up your arm, especially for the kind of organic work that we're going to be doing today. Let's go ahead and begin with the first little bit. So, organic things, organic shapes, that essentially just means anything that is not explicitly geometric. So, we have like geometric forms, we have cylinders, which do have a round edge, we have sphere, which is really going to be a very effective thing to be kind of basing our organic shapes on, is essentially a sphere of some kind. We're basically taking a sphere and then pulling and moving it around. But we have all of these different shapes that we're playing with. When we first start drawing, it can take a little bit to get a grip on creating 3D forms in even just this way. But once you start to get into organic things, weird little blobs like, how do you make this look 3D? How do you do it? Well, we're going to be talking about it today, but essentially, what we are trying to do is learn how to not just visualize and be able to manipulate the 3D model of an organic shape in your head, but also to translate it down onto paper. Let's start with the sphere really quick. Starting with just a good old fashioned sphere, there's going to be a few kind of lines that you need to visualize on your objects. So one of the first things that you're going to want to do is figure out the sort of like the face of it. Not literally everything is going to have a face, but there's going to be like a front and a back. There's got to be some amount of directionality to it. So let's just say this is going to be the face, the front of our sphere. Then from these four lines, or from this cross, you will have lines that go out in all directions, kind of like a beach ball. So there's going to be like we'll say horizontal line. So that's going to be the stuff that goes down along the sides of it. And then there's going to be your vertical line, which goes like up over the top and down under the bottom. If I scooch that off to the side, we can do spheres in a variety of sort of directions with this idea. So then we have our horizontal lines. Let's say this is our horizontal. And this is one of those things that you actually kind of learn whenever you're learning how to draw figures for the first time. You often see heads that are sort of broken up like this. And then we have on the back side the continuation of these lines. We have the vertical line, we have the horizontal line. So you don't need to necessarily draw these exact lines on every object that you do, but it does help to kind of keep that in mind. So adding another layer here. Let's do that hot dog now, shall we? I'm just going to make like a sausage shape. And as we are looking at this, we see there's going to be a front, the face. And if I were to take that line, let's grab a different color so we can see it better. Let's do horizontal line is going to go all the way along the side here and then on the back side. So we'll see that both of those are right there. And then we have also the vertical line. I'll just switch colors once again, make it even easier. Now we see that those are not exactly necessarily making themselves super visible to us just because of the angle. That's okay. That's really, really normal. There's not always going to be circumstances where you can see every bit at a time. And that's why we need to be able to 3D model in our heads, because some of it's going to be hidden, some of it's going to be showing, and we need to kind of be able to figure out where all of it is. So for here, let's say it's kind of just grazing right along the top. You can see it kind of just right over the top there, and then it's right along the bottom here. But taking that and let's do same hot dog, slightly different angle. Okay, now this with just the outline looks like just a shorter hot dog. It just looks like it's a smaller object, but it's the same object. It's just rotated a little bit. So we're looking at it, and now instead of the cross being like right there on that little edge, we're going to have it more like right here. And that means that our lines going along, and then on the other side, and then we have our vertical line, and that's going to be somewhat hidden here, and then kind of pick back up, maybe not quite, right about like there. Not perfect, but you can kind of get the idea here. But then if we rotate it even further, then we can do this once again with our horizontals, and it kind of follows the shape. It follows the curve of that organic shape. And then on the other side, it kind of, you're trying to imagine it like on the other side of that, the hidden part of our hot dog. And that's going to go down and then back up again. So this might feel a little like crazy overwhelming. I understand if this is something that doesn't quite click just yet, and that is totally okay. Something that might be a little bit easier actually is to study something that already has kind of organic shapes and has markers and everything, help you see what it is. And that is going to be fish. Fish and like eels, animals that have those long sort of organic bodies. And there's not a lot of fish that necessarily look like a hot dog, but with fish, it's easier to kind of imagine them because they have a face. You know, they have their cute little face. They're going to have fins, which are going to sit typically right on those lines. So you're going to have some lines that are, you know, some fins are going to sit right on top of that top vertical that's right in the middle of their body. You might have some more like down below. Then there's going to be like fins that come off of the side. And the tail, of course, is going to be something that has, it's either going to be like a vertical tail or a horizontal tail, and that's going to fit on one of those lines as well. So studying, if this is a concept that kind of boggles your mind, it's hard to kind of wrap your head around, looking at something that has anchor points, these fins, the eyes, the lips, the facial features, the tail, that is all something that, for me at least, has really helped me better understand just where all of these weird organic shapes are. But I just wanted to kind of give you a quick rundown of just like a visual 3D scan of some weird organic shapes. But let's go ahead and actually put that into practice, shall we? Let me go ahead and hide these. And let's start with worms. Funny little worms. So first things first, I want you to, with your marker or highlighter or whatever, I want you to just kind of create like a gummy worm shape. So start with one end, kind of do like a long, like a C shape or an S shape. That ought to really do the trick to really help you kind of get that nice softness to it. You don't want there to be any hard angles, any like sharp kinks. Not really into that right now. We're keeping it nice and soft with curves. C's and S's. Once you have a shape or two, what I want you to do is I want you to pick one end, pick one or both ends. So if you have a variety, you have a couple different ones, do a variety as well. Pick one end where you're going to have the face. Basically, add a little face, or if it's easier, you don't have to do the face, you can do like the cross. I think it's a little easier and a lot cuter to have there be a little face. It gives you like a front end perspective. It gives it a little bit of personality in a way that makes it click better, at least for me. But I want you to pick one end that you want to be the face, and I want you to just decide you're going to have a little face there. And then once you have your little face, just go and draw. It doesn't have to be a perfect circle, but draw like a rough circle around it. Because that's the front, that's the head, that's what we're working with. And then maybe your worm has two butts. I'd say try having one with two faces and having one where there's just the one face. You don't see a face on the other side. Okay, now, one of the techniques that you're really going to be leaning into here, we're going to be drawing a bunch of lines, but we're not just going to be drawing like straight lines. That's cute and all. That might be a nice stylistic choice later down the line, but it doesn't really do a good job of describing the 3D-ness of the shape. So we're going to be doing curved lines. And the circle that you put at the head of your worm is going to really help guide the shape of your curve. So if we have this curve here, we can follow that curve and create a bunch of lines that kind of help describe the roundness of the shape. We're showing that the shape is 3D by adding these curved lines, whereas something straight like this is just going to make it look like a flat sock or something like that's laying on the ground. No, this is a round object. It's got dimension, it's got body. Okay, now the technique specifically that we're going to be really leaning on, or the shape of lines that I want you to think about, is I want you to think about, give me that, bananas. We're going to be creating a bunch of lines where they are all essentially originating from the same point, where they're all clumped together like a bunch of bananas. And that is going to be one of the ways that we really show dimensionality and really make it look cool. Because if your lines are not super curved, it's going to look more flat. But if you really, lean into the curve from edge to edge of your shape, that's really going to help make it feel more rounded. Okay, I am going to start with this funny little dude, this cutie patootie. Here we starting with our little round face, and like I said, we're just going to be kind of tracing that shape. But I want you to be careful to not accidentally have your lines be like a little too flat. Lean into the curve as you move more and more away from the face. Exaggerate that curve. Make there be more space in this middle part and less space in the areas where it's kind of clumping together. And then as we get to this middle part where it really starts to dramatically curve, here's where I'm going to employ this banana technique. This is where I am going to let the ones here at the top connect, and then the ones here at the bottom, I am letting them stay distant, letting them stay apart. And as we do this, we are giving the impression that this object is kind of curving away from us, not just curving to the left, away like to the left, but curving to the left and further away. It gives that dimensionality. All right. And now I'm just continuing. And as we get up to the butt here, the end of our worm, we are looking at this and we got to decide like how exactly do we want it to be. So I'm going to go in here and kind of like with the face, I'm going to decide like where is the circle that sort of is like that's the end of our worm. And it's going to be on the hidden side, so we can't really see it, but we still need to know where it is because that's going to help us determine what shapes to draw to lead up to it, to help really describe it. So if we are going with this being our end circle, our end spot, all I need to do to make sure that it delivers, to make sure it really shows, is to build up to this curve. So I need to get from this curve to this curve. And I'm just doing that by bringing these curves up, and there you go. That is our very first worm. All right, that was a good one, but let's do a couple more because the more that we kind of play around with this, the more you can see like the variety available. But really quick before I do, I want to talk about how this is actually like one of the ways that might help you think about it is by cutting the worm in half, to put it quite frankly. So let's say I am going to grab a bigger brush here. Let's say I want to, hold on, let me add a new layer, not make it weird. Technical difficulties, wow. Okay, let me just close out of it really quick. All right, well, you know what? I'll go grab a pen and a real piece of paper because this is being difficult. Okay, sorry about that, folks. Here we go. What I was going to show you, what I was trying to show you here, was if we were to cut this worm in half, then that basically just means it's the exact same shape, but it's just in two now. So here we have our face, fun little face. Then over here we have the cut. So this is the part where the worm is cut in half. And here we can draw that same circle. And let's say like this is their, I don't know, bones, but you know, bear with me. But the shape continues all the way through. Like these curves, if you consider any one of these curves as just a cut, think of it as a cut in the object. It's like a slice of bread. If you take a loaf of bread and then you take a slice out of it, the loaf is still going to be the shape of a loaf of bread. So let me grab my marker and I'm going to do another fun wiggly shape here. Okay. Now the fun thing about starting with the shape and not with, say, the lines is that you can decide what direction you want everything to be. So let me do a nice little S shape. Okay. So I can now decide, looking at these two, which one's going to be the face and which one's going to be the butt. So with this, I can decide I want this to be the face and I want that to be the butt. So I am going to kind of go and figure out all of these places where there's curves, especially where there's a sharper curve. We're going to have some banana action going on here, right? So I'm actually going to get up in here, right up in that curve. I'm going to bring it up and around. And I'm basically trying to create an even distribution of these lines to show that our worm is taking up this 3D space. So I'm going to come in and I can even have them be pretty tight. I can have them be quite condensed. And when they're quite condensed, that's just showing foreshortening. So the more spaced out they are, the more something is kind of like laying out. And the more condensed these lines are, the more something is sort of foreshortened and like traveling away from you. But let's just go back to, okay, there we go. So I like to kind of go and find like checkpoints essentially. Instead of going all the way through and trying to keep the shape going, I find it easier to come and find like, okay, there's my end point. I know that that's going to be the shape that I'm going off of there. And I know that here we're traveling away. Let's say we kind of even out a little bit right there. Then we go, okay. So kind of like almost like think of like a slide at a playground or a water park and how they're made up of sections. When there's an outside of a twist like this, that's where you're going to get this bigger gap in the bananas. And where there's the inside of a twist or a curve, that's where you're going to get more of the condensed lines. So it's going to kind of stretch and bend a little bit depending on which way our curve is going, which way the worm is going. All right, our worm has a nice big fat butt. Now I'm going to show you one where we're seeing two faces. So let's say, actually, let's do a little funky one. Let's really challenge. I'm going to throw a circle in here. That's not on the end. And then I'm going to throw this guy here. And we see its face, but he's definitely like looking away from us. He's looking away. Let's start with this conundrum up here first. This one, because the face is down here, that kind of implies that like there's a curve right behind the face as it goes down into its body. So I am going to follow the same shape of the circle here, and I'm going to keep these lines on the right connected. And then this is where it can start to kind of get a little bit thick in the line department, but eventually we're going to get down to a point where the body of the worm is kind of like facing us like this. It's not tilted away or doing anything wonky. It's kind of just straight at us. And for that, it's basically going to be almost a straight line. So the shape that we're emulating is basically like this kind of an ellipse. We're just really going to see kind of that straight looking line because eventually there's a spot where it goes from curving one direction to curving a different direction. And that essentially is just going to look like thin ellipses, thicker, thicker, and it's essentially like curving like that, where it's coming up and away. So this is going to be pretty straight. And then, all right, so once again, I'm going to find those checkpoints. I'm going to come over here. So I know it's going to turn towards us again a little bit. And then from here, I can kind of just make these lines make sense. I'm going to come up from this middle part, gradually make them come up and match the pattern that I've been doing. But now I'm changing it again, curving. We're getting wider at the outside of this curve. But I want to do one more set, and I'm going to do a slightly different shape. For this shape, I'm going to do more sweet potato rather than worm. Another organic shape that you'll run into a lot. It's kind of like the shape of a lemon. Essentially, what we're talking about is like an oval, like ellipses type shape with like add-ons. This also kind of looks like a nerve bunch or like a piece of candy. Like there's a lot of different things that look like this, but these weird organic shapes that don't really have hard edge, they can be kind of weird and difficult to define. I don't know how many of you all have shopped for sweet potatoes, but they can be really, really round and also sharp enough to stab the bag and make it rip. Okay, so with these, turn it this way. With these, I am once again thinking about where's the center line, the through line. One way you can also think about this is if you think of a cylinder and then you think of the center part, congratulations, you now have a roll of toilet paper. But that's the center part. This is essentially what we were talking about with the big X that we were talking about before. Like that's the face. So here, it's basically going to be like both ends of this shape, this sweet potato shape. That's going to be our face. And then the rest of it is going to all kind of be doing the curve thing around it. So I'm going to just do a really simple one with this sweet potato. And the more organic you get, like sweet potatoes aren't perfectly round. Like the worm we were doing is all like, it was a very round, sort of similar shape. But the thing is sweet potatoes and plenty of other organic things can have bumps and curves on the object that really also help define that shape. So essentially, you're just making these lines, curving them at the edges. That's going to be really important. If your lines are too straight as they hit the edge, it's not going to look super believable. So try to add just a little bit more curve right there at the edge of the object to really help make it feel extra 3D like that. And then from here, you could go and like start to think about those vertical and horizontal lines again, like if you were to cut it in quarters lengthwise, but you don't have to. Like that's just something that can be very helpful, but it's not strictly necessary. Let me do these two now. And let's say this is going to be the front. I'm keeping them more clustered on the edges and wider in the middle to really help make it feel more like it's coming towards me, like it's taking up space. As you're playing around with this, definitely experiment. Try one where you really have tight clusters of lines or where you space out the lines. You can try all kinds of things and see what makes it feel more 3D to you. See what feels right. All right, one more here. This one, I'm going to say that like right here is the face. And then, you know what? Let's have this be the other end as well. So it's going to be curving way around there. In fact, let me just get a line in. Maybe it does kind of have a big funky curve right there. It almost looks like the potato is bowing. Ah, but now we have this face here, so now I have to like really quickly correct to make these lines match up with this shape, like to come and make sense here. So I'm straightening a little bit more with each line until we get two lines that kind of, they're not straight, but they're not nearly as curved And then we see that transition where it goes from, let's say this comes around and then comes to here. And then this, you see that? There we go. That's going to curve away. So there you go. Those are a few different objects or funky, weird, organic shapes. But the idea that you really need to walk away with is the curves are your friend. So practice, practice, practice creating these nice curves and practice making the banana effect where they're all clumped together on one end but open and spread out on the other end. That is going to be a really, really useful skill in helping you create these curves and moves and undulations and things that make really interesting organic shapes. And by describing the actual shape, the form itself with your lines, you are helping avoid that situation where something just looks kind of flat and boring on the page or it just doesn't look believable. Adding these contour lines can really, really help show the viewer the dimensionality of your piece. And you don't even need to necessarily draw these into your final drawings necessarily. This is more of a training to help you better understand how this all works and build that 3D model in your head so that you can be looking at objects and seeing these lines like you're a 3D scanner and you're just like scanning the shapes of things with your mind and then able to translate them onto the page like this. And then once you have this basic understanding, you can then go through and use that knowledge, understanding of how everything is bending and shaping on the page to add shadows in a way that is effective, to better show how something is placed in its space. Foreshortening with drawing, it's all part of this 3D thinking. I really hope that you found this practice helpful. I hope it's helping give you that 3D confidence to really help you build better 3D images in your drawings, because translating 3D objects to 2D is a challenge. But once you understand some of these methods, once you understand some of these concepts of how to position it in your mind and how everything is formed, it's really, really going to help you conquer those subjects with just a lot more confidence and a lot more understanding. It might take some time for you to reflect that in your drawing. Like the knowledge that you have in your head, it still needs to be like practiced to make it stick and to make it really work. But understanding the basis, understanding these forms, it just goes such a long way to making your art elevated, making it look so much better. So, thank you all so much for participating with me and played around with some funky, weird, wiggly little worm shapes. This was a good time for me. I hope it was a good time for you. Thank you all so much for coming. Thank you for being here. I'm going to say farewell. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your night. I'll see you later. Bye, everybody.